So I literally just finished watching the final of Superman and Lois. It's the last episode we're going to see till 2022, which sucks, and season 1 is finally over. But I haven't scripted this video. I've gotten into the habit of kind of scripting videos, or at the very least, like taking down a note of pages and kind of having just an outline of what I'm going to talk about in the video. I haven't done any of that for this, because I just really wanted to immediately talk about the episode after I finished it. So there might be some rambling, there might be some kind of weird pauses in this video, so sorry about that. But I haven't even watched Stargirl yet, I haven't even watched What If yet, and what I've gone into the habit of doing on days like this where a ton of comic book shows come out is watch all of them, and then after that kind of do the reviews for them after I've watched all of them. I didn't do that today because I just feel the need to talk about this episode straight away, because unfortunately I wasn't in love with this episode. Now, I still liked it, I didn't hate it at all. And I do think that this video is probably going to get more dislikes than my Superman and Lois videos usually do, because of the point that I'm like, I don't love it. I'm not crazily into it. There's a lot of decisions they made. There's just the episode in general. I wasn't really happy with it, I guess. Despite the fact I liked it, despite the fact that there were a ton of great moments, I feel like there are some things in this episode that didn't really work well at all. It's annoying as well, because I personally was going to not talk about the things I hated, because I've loved this season so much. I didn't want to make a negative video on it, and I'm still going to try and keep this video kind of half positive, half negative at the least. But yeah, I didn't love it. But real quick before getting into this video any further, if you're not subscribed already, can you do so? Because I make DC and Marvel videos every single week, and new subscribers really do help to keep up the motivation to make new videos. So any new subscriber really does help. But yeah, Superman and Lois is now over, and this might be my least favorite episode of the season. I know episode 5 was which I think was called the best of Smallville. As a whole, episode 5 was kind of weak in terms of what we had up until that point. But in terms of how I feel about the episodes, I still felt fine about episode 5. This episode is the first one that I feel a little tiny bit negative towards. I don't know, just some of the problems I have with it is the pacing felt much worse than usual. It felt like, despite the fact this was an extended episode, I think the extended version of this episode was 45 minutes compared to the usual 43, 42 minutes. So there was more in this episode than usual, but it still felt sort of rushed. It felt like certain things were happening that didn't get near enough focus, or they didn't really kind of give the attention to that it deserved. The Eradicator stuff, I feel like how they went with Taro in the last couple episodes was kind of not great compared to how good the villain was earlier on in the season. Once they made Taro the Eradicator, I was into that because I thought it was heading somewhere good, and then in this episode it just ended up being pretty much the exact same stuff we saw with Taro in the last 3 episodes. And that's a little bit disappointing to me, because I was really hoping they were going to head somewhere or do something really cool with that character, and they ended up just having him no dialogue, kind of pretty much just standing there looking menacing for the majority of this hour. Now that said, once both Clark and John defeated Tal-Rho, the moment where he was like, I just wanted a family, that was a really, really, really good way to end his story arc. I just feel like we should have gotten more in this episode before that scene. It would have made that scene more impactful, but as scenes go, I thought that was a really interesting and good way to end his character. Obviously, he's still around, so I think we're going to see him again someday, and I also think that when we do see him again, he might not be a villain, because the way they ended that with him just being, I wanted a family, and Cal's like, you had one, we were brothers, I feel like they're setting that up so that they're not going to be full-on villains. Or, I mean, Tal-Rho's not going to be a full-on villain, and Clark and him are going to actually be more like an antagonistic role with each other, but not straight on. They're going to fight, they're going to kill each other. So I think we could see something unique, dynamic-wise, down the line. In terms of all that fights, the fights were awesome, they were great. And this probably is the most action-heavy episode we've had in the show yet. And it was really good seeing Clark and John kind of use a lot of, I guess, techniques with each other to kind of take down the Kryptonians, now that we had a bunch more Kryptonians getting resurrected. There was just a lot of great scenes with Clark and John in general. A lot of my favourite scenes in the episodes come from those two characters. There was a lot where, John's, I can't remember the exact line, but John's like, not very good odds, and then Clark was like, sure, but we'll do it together, and then they both kind of flew off and did it. John's storyline this season has been great. I like that they've sent him off to the DOD, it looks like, because that also gives him a very good excuse to show up across the shows or show up across the wider Arrowverse. I know that John Henry Irons is one person that people are thinking will likely be in the Flash crossover and the 5-episode event that starts their season. But the fact that this episode ended on a cliffhanger and we're not going to see the resolution of this cliffhanger until likely 2022 makes me think they might not actually put John Henry Irons in that crossover, because they're going to want to kind of resolve that cliffhanger beforehand, unless they kind of say that whenever the Flash crossover event takes place, it doesn't line up with Superman and Lois season 2 or whatever, so they can kind of do some timey-wimey stuff to get around that. In terms of Natalie being back, I got a little bit spoiled on that because before I got to see the episode, I saw the thing saying that the actress who plays Natalie, I saw that they got up to a regular for season 2, which I'm assuming is something that came out right after the episode aired. But see, the thing as well, the article I saw, it had a picture of Lois, and I didn't read the article, but it had a picture of Lois and it had the actress's name. I didn't know who the actress was. I was like, that's cool. Is it a new character being introduced? And then when the episode was on, I noticed the name of the actress down in the corner of the screen, and then it was when we started seeing flashbacks during John Henry Irons' like falling back to Earth. I kind of put the pieces together in my head that Natalie was probably the actress who's gotten up to a regular, and that's not too surprising because I think a lot of people kind of expected that Natalie would come to this Earth or come to Earth Prime at some point, or at the very least a version of her would show up. I just didn't expect it this soon, honestly. I was thinking maybe that'd be like an end of season 2 or even later sort of thing, but I'm fine with it happening this soon. But that was kind of another scene that I felt as an ending, as a climactic ending, or like as a big cliffhanger ending, they didn't really give the focus to make that exciting or make that impactful. They kind of just glossed over it in a little bit of a weird way. They did close out the episode with a great piece of music though, that was like it was a very kind of depressing version of the Superman and Lois theme, or I guess a very kind of somber version of it, and that was really cool. Speaking of the soundtrack, I really hope they release that soon. Because normally with the main Arrowverse shows, like with the Blake Neely ones that he composes, sometimes it takes 2 years to get soundtracks. So we only got the Arrow season 7 and 8 soundtracks just December gone. That was a year after season 8, 2 years after season 7. Even then, we haven't gotten like the Legends later soundtracks yet. We only got the Supergirl season 4 and 5 soundtracks about a month or two ago. So I hope that we get the Superman and Lois soundtrack very soon, because I would hate for us to have to wait like a year or 2 years to get the soundtrack. The fact that it's done by a different composer makes me think like they might get it out sooner, hopefully. But yeah, it was a good ending. Like we saw in Natalie, I just feel like they could have done some stuff there to make that a little bit more exciting than they did. The scene where John threw the hammer at Morgan Edge was really, really, really cool. I think that before the episode aired, there was some people who were saying that there was a scene in this episode that was one of the coolest, most exciting things I've seen in a comic book live action piece. I'm going to assume it was John throwing the hammer while Superman holds Tal-Rho. That was the scene that everybody was kind of freaking out about. And it was a great scene for sure. I genuinely thought that they were about to get rid of John Henry Irons a couple of times. Like when he was falling to Earth, I was like, no, they're not going to kill him. And then when Lois was like, okay, so you're going to DOD or leaving, I was like, oh no, that doesn't mean he's going to be in season 2, does it? And a lot of that. And they did it a couple of times. They did it with Kyle as well, where we got worried kind of he was going to die in that scene where he was holding the person coming through the fire. And how with Jonathan as well. I genuinely got worried they were going to kill Jonathan when Jordan came back and he was holding Jonathan by the neck. I got really worried they were actually going to straight up kill Jonathan. But we had no losses. Even Sam Lane, who I kind of predicted might die, was just fine. It seems like Sam probably won't be in as big a role next season now that he said he's going back to like a family role instead of a DOD role, but I think that's kind of their way of saying he'll show up maybe once or twice a season, but the fact he's not with the DOD means he doesn't really have an excuse to show up all the time like he did this season. I really thought the Cushings were going to leave. I really was not expecting like Lana, Kyle and Sarah to be in next season, but it looks like they're going to be in a season. I just hope that they write them well, because one of my things was that I didn't really know how you could make Kyle and Lana work outside of the Morgan Edge plot. You kind of would have to probably create something new for them next season, because I think it would be a little bit weird if they every season Kyle and Lana were directly involved in whoever the big bad is. So that's one reason why I thought that they probably would have Kyle and Lana leave, was because it would just be hard to make them tied into the big bad every season. But I guess they're going to try and do that, and if they do it well, then I'm really looking forward to it. I hope that it is done well, because they're good characters. I just personally did not think that they would be able to work or function in a future storyline, in a future big bad storyline. But I'm excited to see what they do with them. If they make it work, then that'd be amazing. Thing as well, it doesn't really look like, I guess besides Sam Lane, that any of the main, and I guess besides Adam Rayner, who plays Tal-Rho, it doesn't really look like any of the mains are leaving. So I'm interested to see if we get any new characters next season besides Natalie, or if this is gonna kind of just be the same cast going forward. Because we also have the actress who plays Chrissy Bebo up to a regular for season 2. and she was already on the show, so it seemed like there's not going to be a whole lot of new characters coming up. Maybe they're going to save that, and like in season 3 we'll kind of get sort of a soft reboot sort of thing, whereas besides the Kent family the entire cast is different, which would be cool if they did that. A lot of the Arrowverse shows do that every couple of seasons, where they kind of soft reboot the show, bring in a whole new cast of characters and get rid of a whole old cast of characters. So it would be cool if they did something like that. In terms of Chrissy and the Smallville Gazette and that, Chrissy and Lois are now partners in it. I really liked that scene. I thought that was a great scene where she was kind of freaking out, realized she's going to be partners with Lois. I also loved the scene where she got to do the interview with Superman, which is probably going to put Smallville Gazette much more on the map than they have been already. Really looking forward to seeing that whole storyline in season 2, because that was one of my favorite parts about season 1, was a whole lot of the reporting aspects, because I feel like the reporting aspects is one thing that, out of all the Superman media I've seen, I guess Lois and Clark, the New Adventures of Superman, and to an extent Batman v Superman and some of Man of Steel, they're like the only Superman media that really did focus on not just Daily Planet, but on reporting in general. Smallville always had kind of the Daily Planet as like a location, and in the early seasons they had a lot of Smallville Gazette sort of stuff with Chloe Sullivan, but I don't feel like they ever gave the focus to the reporting aspect that, for example, Superman and Lois has done. So I'm excited to see what they do with that next season. Another one of my problems with the episode kind of comes down to the whole Jordan Zeta Rho stuff. I did not like how they handled that at all. That probably was even the weakest part of the episode for me. And to be completely honest, I can't put my finger on why I didn't like it. There was just something that felt very off about it, that felt like they weren't handling it well, whether it was the weird dubbing over of Zeta Rho's voice over Jordan's voice, or if it was the fact that they would have Zeta Rho do that weird thing where he was wagging his finger in front of Lois when Lois was trying to get to Jordan's mind. Like that looked way too goofy and way too, I don't know how to describe it. It did not suit what they were doing. And that was kind of the whole thing with that storyline, where whether it was the editing or the pacing, something was really off about it that just made it really, really, really hard to get invested in it or get into it. And it's also the fact that it was incredibly rushed. Like, we basically had 20 minutes of Jordan being taken over by Zeta Rho, and then he was back, and they saved him the exact same way they saved Clark in an earlier episode, like down to the flashbacks of Jordan in his head thinking back to his memories and then breaking out. They even used the exact same music they used with Clark, which I get that they wanted to make it look like a parallel, which is cool, but I feel like that's a tiny bit lazy. Like, they could have made that a little bit more unique or made it a little bit more different. There were a whole lot of parallels in this episode, but for the most part I liked them. There was a parallel of John Henry Irons falling to Earth, which was identical to how Superman fell to Earth in the first episode, where he was also thinking back same music again. We also had the barbecue at the end of the episode of the Cushings was very similar to the barbecue in, I can't remember if it was episode 1 or episode 2, but I think it was episode 1. But yeah, there was a lot of parallels like that. The reason why I don't think the Jordan one worked was because it was more of a plot device than a parallel. At least with the other ones, they didn't really serve to kind of affect the plot, whereas this one really did mean something to the plot. So for that reason alone, I would have liked if they'd made it a little bit different. I also like the Injustice plot, where like there was Superman and Sub-Zero in episode 1 when Jordan was playing Injustice. It was Superman and Sub-Zero here again when it was Jonathan and all the football team. But this time, instead of them being like Superman sucks, they're like never bet against Superman, because it's showing that kind of people now don't think Superman is boring anymore. People have liked him, and that's kind of also a parallel for, I guess, us. Because there's a lot of people who absolutely think Superman is boring, a lot of people who didn't watch the show who thought he was boring, and there are people who've probably watched the show and now that they've seen the whole season are like, nah, Superman is not boring. Superman is an awesome character. So that's kind of really cool. I really like that bit. I don't really know what else to talk about. There's probably other stuff missing. Like, that's why I kind of like the script videos, is because I always kind of forget things to talk about. Or I guess once the video's over, I'm like, oh, why didn't I talk about that? But those are just kind of basic thoughts. Sorry if it was kind of a lot of rambling, a lot of kind of nonsensical or hard to kind of understand stuff. But yeah, I feel like they've done so many episodes this season that could have been a final, and out of all the episodes they've done that could have been a final, this is probably my least favorite one, and this was the actual final, and that's kind of disappointing. I don't hate the episode. There's a lot in this episode I really liked. I just think as far as finals go, and as far as just the quality of the show we've come to expect, this episode wasn't up to par with what we would have expected of the episode, unfortunately. But I think I'm also kind of alone in this. I've seen some people on Twitter agree with me, but for the most part, I've seen that most people have absolutely loved this episode, and it's really upsetting to me that I didn't love it, especially because of how much I've loved this season as a whole. It's just this episode was the one episode I haven't been crazy about. But how did you feel on the episode? Did you like it? Did you hate it? And if you enjoyed this video, please remember to like, share, subscribe, and all of that. And I hope you have a great day.